Hey, welcome everyone to a review of the Apple TV 3rd generation media streamer. Now, if you want to see the written version of this review, you can find a link to the website in the video description. Now, in terms of the pricing of the units itself, the 64GB model comes in at $179 Canadian or $129 US, and the 120GB model comes with an Ethernet port at $199 Canadian or $149 US. That's right, you need to pay more to have an Ethernet port because it's not available on the cheaper 64GB model. But let's switch over to the remote. It's nice and compact and easy to use with one hand. It helps that most of the controls are on the top half of the remote. Although admittedly, this isn't the most comfortable remote to use since it's a little heavy for its size and it has straight edges. What's the big deal about straight edges? Well, that's because this remote has an aluminum cover, so it isn't as soft as plastic. These aren't major concerns, but I just felt it was worth mentioning. Although I'm glad Apple didn't include unnecessary buttons on the bottom, especially annoying app shortcut buttons which would be accidentally pressed, as experienced in other media players. Although the TV button does take you to Apple TV service, but thankfully this can be remapped to go home instead. Alternatively, you can long press the back button to go home to the main screen. There are a couple of notable things about the remote. The first is the Siri button on the side, which we'll go over shortly. The second is the power and volume controls. If your TV and home theater devices are compatible, you can use this one remote to control those devices since the remote has an IR transmitter. The swivel touch command makes a return, which allows you to use as a navigation to fast forward or rewind content, but only in certain apps that support that capability. The touch controls are a bit annoying as sometimes the navigation will jump to unwanted spots, but this function can be turned off in the settings menu. There is a remote app available for iOS and iPadOS devices, and it works rather well. Although alternatively, you can actually just open it from the control center as they're built into the operating system, and it works incredibly smooth, it's super fast and responsive. Unfortunately, there's not an official Android app available. There are ones developed by third-party developers, but if you look at the reviews, a lot of them are mediocre and performance won't be that great. An awesome item here is that no batteries are required to be inserted since the remote is sealed and it can be recharged via the USB-C port at the bottom of the remote control itself. So that's right, there's a USB-C port on the remote itself, no longer lightning cable port, which is great, except no USB charging cables included in the box, despite its hefty price tag. And to make things a little worse than that, there's no USB port on the media streamer itself, so the only way to charge the remote is to plug it in using a cell phone adapter and a wall outlet, or plug it into a computer. Although battery performance is quite stellar, I've been using it for about 2 weeks, and in that time it's only drained about 2%. Now switching over to the media streamer body, it's quite small, which is great, as it can be placed in a home theater cabinet. In fact, it's difficult to notice that the 3rd generation is slightly smaller than the 2nd generation. The 3rd generation is measuring in a tiny 3.66 by 3.66 by 1.2 inches. The design is incredibly simplistic, which works well, especially since it's only available in a black color. The design itself is quite like a Mac Mini actually, with a simple clean body and ports on the back and the Apple logo on the top. On the back are ports for power and HDMI 2.1. The more expensive version, obviously as I mentioned earlier, comes with a 1 gigabit per second Ethernet port, which is great. Not only that, one thing that's not really advertised that much is that the more expensive version also supports Thread technology, whereas the cheaper model does not. In terms of wireless capability, it does support Wi-Fi 6. Not only that, it does support Bluetooth 5.0, which means you can connect an Xbox Series X controller or a PlayStation 5 controller to the media player and use it for playing games, for example, in Apple Arcade. I have videos explaining how to get both those done. I'll put links to those in the video description. Not only that, it also supports Bluetooth wireless connectivity over your headphones, which means you can listen to audio in private. You won't disturb anyone around you. Again, I have another video explaining how to get that done. Link will be in the video description. The neat thing here is if you have compatible Apple headphone type of technology, like the AirPods or compatible Beats headphones, you can actually have dual pair listening. As I mentioned earlier, there's no USB cable included in the box. Another bummer, at this price point, there's no HDMI cable included in the box either. You must buy it separately. Powering everything is an A15 Bionic chip, which is incredibly overkill. Not that that's a bad thing. That alone should give you an idea of performance, but we'll dive into performance later anyway. The bottom of the media player is not that soft, it's not too bad. It's kind of like, I guess, medium. I don't know how else to explain it. But yeah, you could place it on a glass shelf if your home theater cabinet has glass shelving. Just place it on gently. It's not as soft as you might think. Now, as mentioned earlier, there are 2 models, a 64 gig and a 128 gigabyte storage option models. Despite both of them having a pretty decent amount of storage space, Apple has done something pretty crummy here. They don't allow the ability for you to transfer data over to the media player itself and put data on the media player locally. So for example, If you have a high quality video, want to play it locally from the storage unit itself within the media player, you cannot. Apple has blocked the ability to transfer files over. However, if you want to play media content over your network, like say over Plex, I will explain how the performance is and demonstrate it later on in this video. The power cord is about just over 5 feet long, which is pretty decent for what you would find in a media streamer. I'm not sure how much power this media streamer consumes. It's not listed anywhere in Apple's documentation. Not a big deal, but just thought I would mention it. Now, in terms of the smart assistant, as I mentioned earlier, it does come with Siri. Now, Siri is not the smartest smart assistant. Wait, hold on. Not the smartest smart assistant. Yeah, that makes sense. What I said was kind of not smart though. Anyway, it's not the smartest, but I gotta say this. It has some great compatibility with a lot of smart home devices, and you can use it for functionality commands, which I'll demonstrate later on, like searching for content, which is kind of a bummer, but I'll demonstrate that later. But when it comes to smart home controls, like turning on my smart lights, which I'll demonstrate just now, it is probably one of the fastest smart assistance commands. It puts Google Assistant to shame. I gotta give Apple credit there that the speed of Siri is lightning. So let's take a sample. Turn on the basement TV lights. Turn off the basement TV lights. Now, thanks to the capabilities of AirPlay built into iPads and iPhones, you can mirror content from your mobile device over to the Apple TV device. However, I have noticed that despite the playback being extremely smooth, you are sacrificing quality. So this video is 4K content and it looks great on my iPad, but on the TV itself, it looks very blurry, almost like VHS quality. So this is a sacrifice of the AirPlay capability, but of course the trade-off is getting smooth buttery playback. Not only that, you can also mirror your iPhone or iPad device to the Apple TV 4K. You can mirror the screen exactly. I noticed that the input lag is very minimal, and in fact the performance is pretty extraordinary. But switching over to video and audio quality, you're gonna be in for a real treat, especially considering if you're gonna be watching original content, 4K content in HDR from stuff like say Netflix, Disney Plus, Prime Video, Apple TV, and so on and so forth. The quality is superb and outstanding. This media player can support 4K at 60 frames per second in HDR10, HDR10 Plus, and Dolby Vision, so you will not be disappointed. There's also no exception when it comes to audio quality, as it supports Dolby Digital 7.1 surround sound, Dolby Atmos, and not surprisingly, Apple lossless technology. Okay, so now we're diving into actually using the media player itself and the interface. And one of the things I noticed that it's very clean, very minimalistic. It's kind of colorful and vibrant. Of course, as you have more icons and applications installed, it'll look more colorful. And there's some good and bad to this. The first, of course, is it's super easy to use. Everything I'm showing you right now going up and down, that's it. There's nothing more to it. The downside is extremely boring and dull. There's no recommendation systems. You don't get recommended what to watch. It just kind of like, this is all you see and this is all you get. So a lot of interfaces will have like recommendation systems, profile settings, and you can load profiles by pressing and holding on the TV icon on the remote. And if you see here, I have myself, if I had add a user, you have to add it through an iTunes account, or Apple account rather. You can't just simply add a profile and they'll get their own recommended content to watch, whether it be TV, movies. You cannot do that. Not like say the Fire TV OS. Unfortunately, it's very, very limited. In fact, even if you use functions like the search function, it's pretty poor. So for example, as you can see, I search comedy movies. Let's give another try. Comedy movies. I'm just using the help of Siri. And yeah, it gives you some, but there's movies here that like I would never watch, ever, right? Some of them I would, definitely. Some of them I would never do. Some of them I've never even heard of in my life. So it's kind of odd. If we do something like, say, Doctor Strange. The first two results, okay, fine, cool. And the rest, I have no idea what these are, right? You would think that it'd populate more content from Disney Plus sources because there's way more than just this. Unfortunately, it doesn't. So the search function is really lacking. What this really is just a media player for these apps you can install and download from the App Store, which is a massive selection. In Apple's defense, the selection is absolutely amazing, but that's it. You can't do beyond that. And speaking on the item of app availability, the app availability will depend on the region that you're living in. So for example, if I were to search for Hulu, I cannot download. It's not possible because that's exclusive to the US. But as you can see, I do have some Canadian apps like CTV is listed here because I'm based here in Canada. And not only that, you cannot sideload apps. Unfortunately, you're very limited to what Apple offers, and that's pretty much it. Now let's switch over to performance, because this is actually one of the biggest highlights of this media player and arguably one of the fastest media players on the market right now. say, for example, probably the NVIDIA Shield. Actually, I would argue that this media player is faster than the NVIDIA Shield when it comes to opening apps and just getting straight to the content you want to watch. That's right, even though I love the NVIDIA Shield, this is faster. So opening up Netflix, for example, even though I did recently open it, it's just, you'll see that it's just incredibly fast. Like, yeah, okay, I did recently open it, but man, it's just incredibly quick. Not only that, the interface is very heavy and some media players are a little slow, but look at this, man. It's just lightning. It just keeps up as if it was nothing. A lot of media players cannot do that. Going over to Disney Plus, which is another super heavy app, tends to be a little slow on some media players. Let's see how they do. And that's incredible. For Disney Plus, which is not really one of the best optimized apps, the Apple TV just kind of picks up for the slack. I've yet to find an app where it struggles. Let's put it that way. That's how incredible it is. Not only that, speaking on performance, let's switch over to a bit of gameplay. My preference is to use Asphalt 8 as my main benchmarking game across most media players because it's available on most platforms, and it's a pretty graphic intensive game for a media player app. So let's dive into it. Now, Asphalt 8 does have some levels of graphics that you can adjust depending on which device you're using it on. Say like on cell phones, for example. I gotta say the graphics look top notch. They look like they're almost maxed out here. My LG OLED TV looks fantastic. You would actually think for the first little while it's a AAA title if someone just walked into the room. There's no frame dropping. It's completely smooth. It's just an amazing experience. And thanks to that A15 Bionic chip, it really just performance is absolutely stellar. When it comes to playing content over your network, which we're gonna use Plex in this example, everything was done over Wi-Fi 6. So I'm gonna get into some nerd statistics here, so just bear with me. So Wi-Fi 6 capability, no Ethernet, was amazing, okay? Even with a wireless signal, fantastic, one of the best I've ever seen on any media player. But when it comes to playing content over my network, whether it be H.265 or H.264 compression, an MKV or MP4 file format, up to a bitrate of 65 megabits per second, it played it just fine. That's how good Plex performance and network performance of this media player is. It's absolutely phenomenal. So giving an example, if you look at this video here, this is the raw video I uploaded for the Sony WH-1000XM5 headphone review. You can find that in my channel. This is the raw video uploaded to YouTube. It's 4K 60 frames a second, H.264, MP4 file format, and it's super smooth. It doesn't stutter at all. Again, I'm on a wireless signal. There's no wire connected at all. And as you can see, it's just instantly there. So it plays it just fine. And 65 megabits per second is extremely rare, high bit rate. Okay, it's very hard to find a video that high. The only time this thing struggled was to play the raw video file. This is unedited, unscripted video from my camera. It's 4K, 60 frames a second, 150 megabits per second, MP4 file format, H.264 compression. This is extremely high. Almost never will you see it. What I noticed is that it'll play for the first few seconds and then it'll still continue playing, but the frame rate drops a lot. It might be hard to notice because I'm just kind of standing there. I'm not sure if my camera will pick it up, but it's stuttering a lot right now. Audio's still playing. The video's still playing. It just can't seem to handle it. I don't think this is a network issue. I just think that Apple's TV is having trouble playing the compression of it. I noticed that this is kind of a bottleneck with some processors and how Plex app is optimized. It's not a networking thing. This is purely a compression handling thing. So I have this frame droppage on this 150 megabits per second video file, even with a wired Ethernet connection. Going over to the system settings menu, there's not much to go over here because it's general information. You can, update your Apple ID information in case you meant to change accounts or whatever. You can sync it up to your Apple AirPlay and HomeKit. If you need to synchronize anything. So this is a great device for an Apple ecosystem. So that's a wrap for this review. Now, it's an okay media streamer, but if you have the second generation version, do not upgrade. The changes and benefits are just very minute. It's not worth spending the extra money for it. You have to understand that technology moves fast. And as long as Apple's gonna take it easy and chill out, but still make things a little bit cheaper, but still overpriced, man, the competition is not gonna rest. Amazon has released the TV Cube 3rd generation, ironically the 3rd generation. Also, ironically, at the same season this was released, the Apple TV 3rd generation. And they made some great progress there. It does have its shortcomings, but the point is, you have the competition that's getting fiercer at the same price point. Apple's gonna slowly fall behind. But if you're heavily invested in the Apple ecosystem, maybe worth checking out. But that's pretty much a wrap for this review. So if you found this video useful, be sure to check out my website and social media links in the video description. Hit the like button, it does help, subscribe, and thanks for watching.